Thanks for coming. Happy New Year, Happy New Decade. My name is Rob. I organize Idea to IPO. We've been doing events in Silicon Valley for many, many years. We hold events multiple times a week from San Jose to San Francisco. We always have a busy, busy calendar of events. I want to highlight two events that are coming up. January 30th, the Venture Capital Panel in Palo Alto, What's Hot in 2020. So check that out. In February, we have partnered with Startup Grind Global Conference 2020. It's their 10-year anniversary, so we're offering 15% off of those tickets. So it's one of the biggest conferences in Silicon Valley. So check out the details for those events and all of our events on our website, idea2ipo.com. We launched officially on February 1st, 2010. What year is it this year? Yeah, that's a long time. Anyway, at that time, we had no members and no events on our calendar. At this stage, we have over 60,000 members along all our meetup groups in the Bay Area. We've organized, promoted, and produced over 2,150 events. By any standard, by any measure, we're the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley, bar none. Great reaction, Gary. Our mission is to promote entrepreneurship, support entrepreneurs, build community, and provide value in the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem. We provide content that's practical, actionable, and relevant. And we believe in building community because Silicon Valley is an aspirational ecosystem. It attracts people from all over the world who come here to do great things. Who here is not originally from Silicon Valley or the San Francisco Bay Area? Who here was born and raised in Silicon Valley or the San Francisco Bay Area? Wow, got a lot of natives today. That's cool. Let's hear it from the natives. With regard to value, it is important that we provide value at each and every one of our events. So we make sure our events are affordable. And if you cannot afford the cover charge for whatever reason, come talk to me and we'll work something out. And at each and every one of our events, we make sure that we provide a delicious buffet meal. Is that a delicious buffet meal? Well, let's hear it for Procopio for sponsoring that delicious buffet meal. We have many, many partners to help us do what we do. Law firms, venture capital firms, angel investor groups, incubators, accelerators, colleges, universities. And again, we're grateful to Procopio for hosting us at this beautiful venue. We've held many, many events here, and we look forward to many, many more. And I would like to have Roger Rappaport, partner here at Procopio, come up and say a few words. So let's hear it for Roger. Applause.
Okay, so we'll take maybe 10 seconds to pay for dinner. Yeah, just 10 seconds to pay for dinner, and then we'll talk about something interesting. So Procopio is a full-service law firm, 200 plus lawyers throughout California, and I head up our venture capital and emerging growth practice group. So I deal with clients from raw startup all the way through exit. 27 different practice groups, IP, litigation, real estate, tax, all of that. Anyway, I think we paid for dinner. So now, really, I've had 4 clients this week that when I've asked the question as to what their funding strategy was, it really seemed like they had no clue as to how to develop a really good funding strategy. Does everyone in here know how to develop, or do they have a good funding strategy? Nope. So, okay. So I know Gary's going to really get into the meat of this, but I was an entrepreneur for 10 years, and my funding strategy, which ultimately did not work, because I had a really crappy exit after 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears, was raise whatever I could from whoever I could, as much as I could, and ultimately, the early money that you give up and you take is very, very dilutive because it's very expensive money. And so a lot of people had great exit from, my company. I just wasn't one of them. So I just tell my clients, do what I didn't do or don't do what I did, and you'll be absolutely fine. But to me, a good funding strategy really is raising money at inflection points. And, what is an inflection point? So the client that I had in today, I said, what's the inflection point? And they said, I said, how much are you raising? They said $500,000, which seems to be a magic number. People always raising $500,000. But I said, what's it for? And they said, they're going to build a website. They're going to build the platform. I said, that's great. So we're going to go out, and people are going to say, what have you got? And you're going to say, here's my platform. And they're going to say, okay, tell us about the traction, tell us about market fit. And you're going to say, well, we don't have that. And they're going to say, hey, all you've got is a pretty website, right? So that's building your MVP is not an inflection point. An inflection point is a measurable milestone, to me anyway. It's a measurable milestone that when achieved, it creates a lot more value. Your pre-money valuation would really spike up. So if you think about your initial round and you think about your next round, what is the time and money it's going to take to get from one point to the next? And then will that next inflection point be a significant enough inflection point so as to enable you to raise money at a much higher valuation? Because that's ultimately, in any funding strategy, what you want to do. Raise money at every point when the valuation is higher and higher. Any questions? Any good question? I'll give you my workbook, which is all the do's and don'ts. It's the first of 3. Any good questions? Okay.
So when do you stop raising money and become profitable?
When do you stop raising money?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of your fundraising strategy, right? As you look down the road, you get to the point where you're cash flow positive, or not. At what point do you want to maybe slow the growth? Depends why you're raising money. If you have a good IP position, right, you can afford to go slow and steady and raise money at inflection points. If your only strategy is first to market wins, if you go real slow and steady, the chances are, if you have a good idea, somebody will go right by you. So I think it really is fact dependent as to when you stop raising money, or when you slow the pace of taking money. It's a good question. There you go.
Got it.
Good catch. You get another one. No, I'm kidding. Anyone else have a question?
What if you haven't started your inflection point yet? How do you know that?
Well, I mean, I think part of developing your business model, I think the business model that is the worst and will turn off any investor, you say, is the market is this big and we're going to get 1%, therefore we're going to be $1 billion company, right? So whenever you're building a model, you're building it from bottoms up and inside out. And I think you have to ascertain, as you're building your model, what are your funding needs? If you're independently wealthy and you're a trust fund baby, you can bootstrap from inception to exit, right? But if you're not, I think you have to look at your plan and say, how far can I bootstrap this company? And then when I raise money, if you're looking at friends and family, typically the people that will fund you at that point are just people that love you, right? People that know you, people that love you, and just say, we know him, he's going to execute. But beyond that, you're going to have some level of market fit. You're going to have to have some KPIs, some unit economics, that when you're going out there, you can say, even though it's on a very limited level, these are our KPIs, right? And we've proven on a small model that we have a scalable, predictable business model. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but it didn't. Talk to me about it. All right, thank you. Welcome, and thank you all for coming.
Okay, we have a couple of other partners here tonight. I would like to have them also come up and say a few words. Let's hear it for Pramal and City National Bank. Applause.
Thanks, Rob. So, I'm just here from City National. So once you guys raise money, you need a bank. So you can always come to me. I'm right here at Palo Alto. City National is owned by Royal Bank of Canada. I'm the relationship manager out there. This is the first time I'm coming and talking to a group of people, so don't have a lot of words to say, but take care of deposits, lending, financing. So if you're starting a company and you need financing for computers or software, we do all that. So you don't have to put it from your own money. We can help you set up that, so it's kind of not spending your own money, and we can spread out that to 5 years. So if you have any questions on banking, come and see me. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
All right, next up we have Ajish from Social Pulsar. Applause.
Thank you, Rob. Hi, my name is Ajish Nair. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Social Pulsar. So we are a digital marketing and marketing automation company based out of San Francisco. We help a lot of startups in the Bay Area since last 4 years. So if you have any early stage company or startups company, we really can help your company to grow to the next level. So it doesn't matter whether you have a funding or not. We help a lot of companies just for free till you get funding as well. So free feel to reach out to me. If you have any marketing strategy, if you have anything related to digital marketing, SEO, PPC, Google AdWords, social media marketing, we can help you out even for the marketing for free. Thank you.
Okay. So, though our local mission is to support entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, our global mission is to democratize entrepreneurship and innovation all around the world. So we have an active video program. Many of our videos are on various platforms, including YouTube. And our partner in this endeavor is Tim Jeggers of Jeggers Films, one of the top professional videographers in Silicon Valley. So let's hear it for Tim.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Tim. I do video production is my main emphasis. I do all sorts of other stuff, multimedia related. I do event coverage. I do branding content. I do web development, photography, all kinds of stuff in those relative areas. So if you have any question about video production in general, where to find this content, or anything relative to what I'm talking about right now, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be here all night. I'll be over there. And then towards the end, I'll be lingering around, and I'll pass it back to Rob and we'll get started.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here's the schedule for the rest of the evening. We're going to have our presenter present. Hold your questions. We have various breakpoints for Q&A. If you want a copy of the slides, you can email Gary directly. We're going to reserve some time towards the end of the evening for people that want to practice their pitch. I think we have 2 people lined up. We repeat this event every month or so, so if you would like to practice your pitch at one of our future events, keep that in mind. It's always a safe place to get feedback. You're not going to be humiliated publicly, maybe privately, but not publicly. But anyway, it's a great opportunity to practice in front of a crowd. Towards the end of the program, which is roughly 9 p.m., by the way, we're going to go straight through without any breaks. So if you need to get up and use the restrooms or grab some food, that's okay. We're going to have a raffle. Here are some of the prizes. Who Moved My Cheese, that's a great book. Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And this is from City National Bank. It's a barbecue set, so you can get ready for your summer barbecue. So you must be present to win, and we'll pass the fishbowl around towards the end of the program, right before the raffle. So without further ado, I want to introduce our featured speaker tonight. He is a thought leader, an investor, a dynamic speaker, and he's passionate about helping entrepreneurs succeed. And yes, that's Gary Jinks. So let's hear it for Gary.
Good job. All right. Now, before we get started so he's going to record tonight. That's one of the reasons we're going to try to control the questions. Normally, I let everybody just, if you got a question, give me a question. But we're going to try to package it together so it doesn't mess up his videoing too much. But I do want to make a quick announcement, also particularly in case anybody leaves early. If you like what's going on here tonight, tonight's class is really more of a fundamental, foundational kind of thing. Sort of like if you don't understand algebra, if you don't understand addition, you're never going to get to algebra. So this is kind of making sure that as an entrepreneur, you know where you're starting. But those of you, I was talking to some of the folks in there, if you're just conceptualizing your idea right now, or you've been pitching and you can't figure out why it's not working, or you're getting ready to go out to talk to some investors, there's an incubator in Sunnyvale called SVI Hub, and I agreed to do 2 classes for them. One's tomorrow night, and one's Tuesday. And they're basically a 6-week incubator program in 2 2-hour classes. And it's not a meet-up kind of a talk. Bring your laptop, and we're going to actually build your plan. We're going to walk through all the pieces of your business one-on-one in those meetings. And the purpose for it being 2 meetings is when we get through the first part, it gives you the weekend to digest what came out of that, maybe apply some of that, understand it a little bit. And then Tuesday is the second one, and that gets into some other things. So it's very unique. This is a program that I generally do internationally. I've never done it in the Valley before, but it's it's a very good program just to get on to going that. So I just wanted to give that up front a little bit. So if I don't turn you off too bad here tonight and you think you learned something, then wait until tomorrow to that class. So on that, let me make sure the everything's working here. Oh, we're good. There we go. So does that mean I'm on now? Do I have a mic? You getting recorded? You hear me? All right. Hi, I'm Gary Jinks. We're going to talk a little bit about startup model, understanding investors, and pitching. We are not going to build a pitch deck tonight. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of pitching. So why am I standing up here in front of you? So I've had kind of a unique career. Oh, that's interesting. That's not how it's supposed to look. Anyway, I've done everything from combat vehicle design to apps. I've designed over 25 combat vehicles. I worked with DARPA and we did the very first 2 grand challenges, which is the standard for autonomous vehicles. And I did all that. Then I decided to get into startups. And so I've got a strong background in technology. So almost no matter what you're doing, I can probably understand it in a couple minutes. I've captured over $300 million from my clients getting into new markets and bringing new products to business, which is one of the reasons I started GLJ Group. The company I was working with went from 0 to $18 million in 2 years, and they thought they'd promote me, and I'm thinking, San Jose, California, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Wow, I just don't see that happening. So I started GLJ Group. And then I started South Valley Angels, and I've built global ecosystems around the world. I built the first corporate innovation center in Saudi Arabia. We launched 21 startups in 18 months, and one went from 0 to $15 million revenue in that 18 months. I've been running South Valley Angels for about 7 years, and I've launched, in February, I personally launched my 400 startup by sitting down and actually building the strategies of each one of those companies, not just they pitched to me and we said, oh, we launched them. These were companies I actually sat down and did one-on-ones with them completely from the beginning. So that's kind of why I'm here. I've got a little bit of experience at this. Oh, there we go. So I want to start off with kind of the thing. So you're going to see a theme here, and a lot of this is a visionary environment, the startup model. So I want to start off with my visions of how I see the future. As you can see, I believe innovation will be driven by private investment, innovation ecosystems, and global teams. That's actually pretty much kind of an older vision. It's taking off everywhere right now. I personally believe that innovation hubs are going to replace universities for most entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs last in college about 2 years. So I'm putting together a program of how they can come out and they can launch that. And I believe that's the secret, which is one of the reasons I'm working out of SVI Hub down in Sunnyvale. We're implementing all these programs, although I've worked with every incubator up and down the valley. I believe the startup model is unique from other business models and needs to be approached accordingly. And we're going to talk about that tonight because that's a key piece of where a lot of investors fail. Okay, let's talk about business models. We're going to talk about the 3 fundamental business models. The traditional business model, everybody knows. We go to school, we learn about it. Think about your restaurant, service, retail. These are generally debt-type businesses, and they're very hard to scale. That's a traditional business model. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail on that. Everybody understands that one. The second business model we look at is the franchise model. You buy it, wear the hat, follow the instructions, you'll succeed. Why is that? Because they have supply chain, brand, and name. And that's what you get when you buy it, okay? So now let's talk about the startup model and why it is uniquely different. If you try to apply the traditional business model to the startup model, you will fail, okay? Because it is not the same. So let's talk about that. What makes a startup? Anybody in here read Lean Startup? All right, that's going to be an old book, you know. So I ask that question a lot, like, huh, what book? And it's like, you know, Crossing the Chasm, you know. Nobody in here is, oh, you've actually read that one. Okay, you know, that was the book in the 90s. Anyway, okay, here's what it says. Man, this is screwing up all the format on all of mine. Whose computer is this? Okay, a startup is a human institution designed to deliver a new product or service under extreme uncertainty. You notice in there, nowhere does it say start a business. Okay, think about that and hold that in your back pocket for a little bit. The only reason we really start businesses is because people like Roger back there and lawyers and so forth say that without that you can't give away shares and you can't get shares if you're not a corporation, and so there's legal reasons for it. But if you're just going to create, I'm working with a startup company right now that has no intention of getting any customers. They are purely going to develop the technology and then sell the license. They will probably exit in 18 months, and they'll probably clear $10, $15 million when they sell that, but they're not looking for a giant gain. They're looking to move on to this one and then go on to the next project. Nowhere in there are they starting a company. They're not even giving away equity. So it doesn't say about starting a company, but there are reasons for that. But that's what Lean Startup says the definition is. Why is the startup model unique? Anybody got a shot on that? Who wants to give a shot on why it's different? All right, since the hands are flying up so fast, I'll go with you on that one. This is what drives the startup model. It's based on, oh man, I should have used my computer. Okay, anyway. It's based on investor exit. That is number one. This model starts with somebody giving you the money you need to do. It's not based on debt. It's not growing at the speed that your debt allows you to grow. You say, I need $1 million, you get funded with $1 million. That's what allows you to have rapid growth. That's what allows you to explode quickly, is that fact that you've got your money. And acquisition. Actually, more than 95% of all companies get acquired. So if you're going down this model, in most cases, you should be applying an acquisition strategy. You can change that to an IPO later, but that's the hard rocks. Very few companies go IPO. Okay? So what are the challenges? Everybody's got challenges in this model. Most of you that have been in this very long understand. Okay, entrepreneurs, funding, building a team, and speed to market. Those are the primary challenges for it. Who in here is trying to build a team right now? How you doing? You guys have been around for a while, so you're a little different. But it's really hard to build. Everybody wants the A team, right? You want the best of the best? It's kind of hard to hire the best of the best when you have no income. And, you know, so anyway, it's hard to hire free. So that's a big challenge because a funder you'll never get funded if you're a team of one. So speed to market is the most important thing. We're going to talk about that a lot tonight. That is the number one thing in the startup model, the speed to market and a sense of urgency. On the investor side, our biggest problem is quality deal flow. Jeff back there was saying he gets 200 pitch decks a week. I can guarantee those aren't 200 quality pitch decks, trust me. So that's our biggest problem, is how do we weed through the issues here, okay? Those are the problems. Now, in the startup model, you're supposed to be solving a problem, right? So what problem are we trying to solve right now in the new generation? We're trying to meet the demand of innovation. The demand of innovation right now is higher than it's ever been. Corporates are looking for innovation like there's no tomorrow. And that is the problem we're trying to solve. How do we get, if each one of you had a good idea, how do we get all of you out into corporate so we can do it? When a corporate comes over the valley and says, hey, we're looking for these kind of companies in this kind of vertical market, they want us to deliver 15, 20 companies that are doing that they can come and assess and take a look at and see what they want to do with them. So that's the problem we're trying to solve, is how do we create as many startups as we can that are quality, that we can deliver to corporates so they can acquire them. All right, man. All right. Okay, this is going to get old if this is what's going to happen all night. Well, we go. We got it going. We got it going. Maybe I'm just standing in the wrong place. Maybe I'm starting in the wrong place.
It was hooked up to this one. I'm not sure this computer says right.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so okay. Oh, it's an Apple. No wonder it's screwing up all my formats. Okay. Jeez. Okay. So I want to start off with a couple things and walk through the evolution of startup models. And I call them, I kind of do them like anything, Industry 4.0, whatever. So I call it Startup 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. Startup 1.0 is the Silicon Valley model. That's been going on here since the 70s. That's basically investor-driven, and an entrepreneur, it is an extremely inefficient model. It's based on you standing on Sand Hill Road with a sign that says, I'm awesome, pick me, okay? So it is driven by the investor, it's very exclusive, and it really limits deal flow. So that's Startup 1.1 and 1.0. Startup 2.0 was when it went global, and that was, there we go. That's when it went global and mainstream. And what that means is everybody around the world came to the Silicon Valley, said, oh, I know how to do this now. They built an incubator. So the whole world started being incubators. There's no country that doesn't have incubators in them now. And that's what I do. I go over and fix those incubators that aren't working now. The problem with that is they build these incubators, and I go to these incubators, and they've got all these mentors, none of which have ever been in a startup. Okay, so that's one of the problems with that. When it went global, you've got it outside of this valley, it doesn't work very well. The other thing is it went online. AngelList, Gust, EquityNet, all these, there's thousands of them now where you've got, and you can drop your idea into a platform. Neither one of these are going to go away. They're always going to be around. But I don't believe the online angel investing is really where the good deals happen. As an investor, I was in AngelList for a while, and it just got overwhelming. And I believe that good deals still happen eye to eye sitting across from a table, okay? So now we have 3.0, and I call that precision innovation. It is driven by entrepreneur and corporate and investor enabled. Nothing against my brethren investors, but who says we know what we're doing? Who says we are picking the right companies and all these kind of things? So what we're looking at is an entrepreneur. Why should you have to hope to get selected and hope to get chosen and hope to get into this? Why don't you just say, hey, I want to come in tomorrow and start my company and do it on your term and walk into an incubator tomorrow and start doing that, okay? The other is driven by corporate. So if the entrepreneur can control it and you can connect them with the corporate who wants it, then all we do is take it to the investor and say, I got a company, I got a startup, I got 4 corporates that are monitoring for an acquisition. Do you want to fund this channel? So it's more investor enabled. It's organized, and it's more of an organized development and creation. And it's worked around micro ecosystems that are regional. So I have micro ecosystems in the Middle East, Europe, East Coast, here in the Valley, and so forth. And that's where I believe is the difference between the Startup 3.0, as I call it, or precision innovation, building what people want. Okay, so let's get started a little bit here. So you've got a great idea. Now what? Okay, you can either go out on your own. How many people took channel number 1? All right, that's the most common. You went out on your own, build your own network, learn on the fly. How many of you would actually go out and become a surgeon without going to school and learning how to be a surgeon? Okay, well, there really aren't many places to go to school to learn how to be a startup. So what do? You hope to get into an incubator. You hope to get selected by Y Combinator or 500 Startups or one of these folks. Now, the advantage of that is there's structure and a framework, and you're plugged into an ecosystem. That's the advantages. I believe the future, like I said earlier, is incubators and accelerators, because as young people come up and start doing this, they still need to get educated. They still need to learn how to run a business. They need to learn and understand how to do that. They may have a great idea, but that only gets you so far. The bottom line, you need to be engaged in ecosystem. As we talked about in Lean Startup, it's about being engaged and working within a community. Okay, so everybody hears the word ecosystem. Anyone know what the definition of an ecosystem is? What is an ecosystem? What do you think of when somebody says ecosystem? Go ahead, Jack.
A series of independent bodies that form a structure when working concurrently.
That's pretty close. That's pretty close. It is a bunch of people, but the key to that is, according to Oxford, a community together with its environment functioning as a unit. Not an awful lot different than the definition from Lean Startup, right? Talking about humans. So it's about putting people together. Why is the Silicon Valley so good at this? What does the Silicon Valley do that everybody came over here to learn? And it's really simple. They learned how to incubate, fund, and commercialize an idea. Now, do you know why that works so well in the Silicon Valley and why it doesn't work in a lot of other places? Because they incubate an idea from a startup down here and they sold it to this guy. Google bought it, Apple bought it, yada, yada, yada. So it didn't go very far. It didn't even go a mile. That company may have never gone farther than a mile in its entire life. When you start traveling around the world, they don't have an ecosystem like this. This ecosystem is second to none. New York might argue that, but they're still third. Anybody from New York? Okay. Anyway, so if I say what is an ecosystem, what does somebody think of if I was to ask, Jack, I'm going to go with you since you volunteered earlier. If I was to ask you what makes up an ecosystem, what is an ecosystem to you?
Well, I think the independent bodies part is the most important. There needs to be like multiple different things.
Oh man, things and a lot of arm waving there. Yeah. Okay, let's start about this. So it's real simple. This is how we divide an ecosystem. An innovation ecosystem consists of these parts here. Okay. Now, the very center of this ecosystem is an innovation hub, an incubator, a corporate innovation center, whatever you want to call it. I believe that you have to have that. That is a physical location where the startups can reside, investors can come, everybody in the ecosystem can meet. That's why I don't believe online works as well, because you cannot manage that with 4 million investors and 500 million startups in a giant bucket, okay? So let's walk about that a little bit. So we talk about the innovation being the center. That's the heart of it. And then you've got the investors. If all you have are investors, this ecosystem will fail. This is what they've got in the Middle East. So for example, when I was working in Saudi Arabia, one of the most exciting things for the investors over there is to be able to invest in a startup and go to a party and says, I got a startup. You know, all the and that's it. That's all they have. They have almost no ecosystem over there. All they've got is lots of investors. Not very, very little happens over there in that case. Okay, so you need to have some other things. Okay, so resources. If you've got investors and resources, you're getting pretty close. When we talk about resources, we're talking about mentors, people that can actually come in and help you drive your business and get it going. The folks that can help bring that experience that you don't have. The other thing are enablers. Enablers would be people like Tim who can come in with a tool, a product, or people who do coding for you. People that actually bring something to the table and do something for you, enablers, local businesses. If you have this part, if you as an entrepreneur have this in your ecosystem, you can be successful. You can be successful. You've got everything you need to get there. Now we're going to bring along the corporate. It's becoming much more important these days because they're the ones that do all the acquisitions and they're getting engaged now at much earlier stages. In previous years, way back in the day, the corporates didn't really get engaged. They just sat back until something got big and exciting and then they'd buy it. But now they're coming in and getting engaged very, very early on. As far as universities, this is where we get all the smart people from. And if you're outside of this country, government is critical in many cases to running a corporate innovation. If you have all that, you've got a perfect ecosystem. There should be no reason for you not to be successful. Okay? So that's an ecosystem. The ecosystem is going to replace your organizational structure as a startup. This should be your organizational structure. The purpose of a startup is not to build a dynasty. It's not to go out and hire 500 people and become a giant entity. It's to get your idea out the door. So you want to leverage this to be your ecosystem, to be your organizational structure. That's what we're looking for here. All right. So that is a basic foundation. So anybody got any questions? We're going to do the questions kind of in chunks for the recording here. Any questions on what we talked about right now? Everybody understood that good? There will be a test later. Okay. So how does it work? So let's take a look at what we've got here. You've got, okay, so you've got the idea creation, you get funded, go to market, your growth, and acquisition. So let's talk about those in pieces. We call this phase the preparation. I would suspect everybody in here is in this phase. Would that be correct? Anybody out here or here? You're out here somewhere? Okay, very good. So you've gotten some funding, okay? So most of us are in here. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll come over to here. So if you're in this stage right here, it's frequently called bootstrapping, friends, family. What we're going to talk about, this is what you have to do. And like Roger said earlier, investor alignment is critical, and because most companies don't do that. Like Roger said, they'll come and say, hey, I need 100K to build something. But how does that align to what an investor wants to see, okay? So in order for you to come today and talk to an angel investor, you need to demonstrate that you understand your market fit and your customer. You need to demonstrate that you have a plan from today to exit. You need to show us that you understand what it's going to cost, because if you don't know what it costs, then how do we know you're asking for the right amount of money? Okay? You've got to know that. You have to be able to communicate that intelligently. At the end of the day, you can have the best team, the best product, but if you can't communicate it intelligently and get the point across, you won't get funded, which means you won't get out of this point right here. And you have to have an MVP or some sort of prototype to show that you can actually do what you're trying to do. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, execution phase, next phase. The whole purpose of market entry, a lot of people think this is where you're supposed to go out and start making money. You will make money, but the purpose of this stage right here is to validate that you have the right product at the right price. That's all you're trying to do. You may not raise any revenue, but if you can validate you've got the right product, the right price, you can get to the next stage, okay? Now, normally you're going to have some revenue out of that because it comes to it. But those are going to be like 10 cents on the dollar, because here you're probably working with early adopters, so you're giving it to free or an extended something or other, but you're not making a dollar for a dollar like you will when you get up to this stage here, and it's all about revenue. It's all about getting started and understanding what's going on. Okay, this chart was one of the first charts I saw back in the early 2000s, and it's still as applicable today as it was back then. And it hasn't changed at all, which brings me to the Silicon Valley, so forth. You know, they always might want you entrepreneurs to pivot, right? This Valley hasn't pivoted since 1970. But that's okay, they don't have to. All right? So what I want to focus on this chart is the valley of death, because this is where most startups die, and most of you are sitting in that valley of death right now. Okay? And we've all heard the numbers. 1 out of 10 of them are going to fail, right? Whether that number is still true or not, who knows? But that's the number that's out there. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I'm going to mention something right here. I saw an interesting stat about 3 weeks ago that I had to put on here. Maybe I did. There we go. Only 25% of founders enlist the help of executive coaches. Now, this gets back to what we talked about earlier. You would never become a surgeon without going to college. Yet so many startups will run around for 2 years Googling stuff and trying to understand how to do it, and eventually run out of money. And there are some really bright people, particularly in this valley. Now, not everybody knows what they're talking about, but if you're an entrepreneur, you should tie in to some of these executive coaches and stuff and understand what it is and how to do it, because you're not going to be able to go to college for 4 years and learn how to do it, or you're going to miss that whole speed to market thing, okay? But I thought that was interesting. Only 25% actually ask for help. Oh, well, there were some more bullets on there too, but boy. No, I guess not. Anyway, so let's talk about equity funding options. Man. Oh, there we go. All right, let's break down the different type of investors. We've got angel investors who generally invest between $5,000 and $50,000, okay? That's folks like us. How many people know the difference between an angel investor and a VC? Go ahead. Yeah, you. I can't.
Angel is private money, VC is professional money. Angel is investing from their pocket, VCs are investing.
Exactly. That's the big difference, okay? So angel groups, such as South Valley Angels, Band of Angels, they'll generally come together and you can get up to about $1 million. Our biggest investment has been about $750K, but for all you ladies, Golden Seeds will do $1 million funding. They have an East Coast, West Coast, New York, and San Francisco locations, or Bay Area locations. And they only invest in women, or women-owned. So I can't even get in the door. Okay, so that's groups. Venture capitalists, that's your classic Series A, B, C. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Most people know what those are. But these are the next round of folks after that. Then you have corporate venture. Now that differs. That gets a little bit more where corporate ventures tend to invest with the purpose of probably acquiring you later. And that's back to this aligning yourself with corporates and so forth and so on. And they work in a variety of different manners. And they'll just keep giving you money as long as you keep meeting your milestones, and then eventually they'll like you and they'll buy you. Okay? That could be a very quick way to get to your market, by the way. Then there's crowdfunding, ICOs, STOs, initial coins, tokens, and so forth. I'm not going to talk about that today. Those are kind of new things. My thumb's going to be wore out by the time I'm done here tonight. Okay, so let's talk about this. We were talking about having an investor strategy. Like Roger said, most startups just they just want to get funded. They throw it out there and look for funding. But you need to sit down and understand who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, and so forth. Look at their sector. If it doesn't look like they invest in your sector, then don't try to go pitch to them. They're probably not going to invest in you. Look at the size. I get a lot of entrepreneurs say, well, I'm talking to VCs and I'm not getting any results at all. Well, that's because you haven't even gotten angel funding. You're so early on, you're not ready for them. You're talking to the wrong people. Other thing is locations. A lot of investors still invest only like in the Bay Area or local or just in the United States. There is international, but it's not as common as a lot of people would like to think. The other one, I want to talk about this one for a second, because I get a lot of people say, oh my gosh, these guys they invested last year in something just like what I'm doing. They're going to be a perfect candidate. Probably not. They just invested in something just like you. So let's flip that coin upside down. What they are looking for is something complementary. So if somebody just invested in something that you're absolutely complementary to, that is a very good investor to go talk to, because they're looking for something, because they can invest in you, which will then explode that, which will then tie you in, which gives you a connection to growth already. 1 + 1 = 3 in that. Yeah, no, can't ask questions yet. We'll get to that. Okay, the other thing is involvement. Everybody says, I want smart money where my investors are involved. That can be a good thing, bad thing. Some investors will come to your office every day, and they'll consume 2 or 3 hours of your time every day. And you're trying to say, you have to leave. I have work to do here. So you need to understand, you don't want them too passive, and you don't want them too active. So you got to interview them when you're talking and find out who they are. Sometimes you don't until it's too late. Okay? Now, So those are what you should be looking for when you're out looking at investors. You should be looking at these kind of things. So what are investors looking for when they're looking at you? This is a very high level generic, but I like this chart. I got this from Richard. And what investors are looking for is, where are you? What is your industry? What is the side? What are my multiples? Are you credible? What kind of control do I have? What kind of control does the company have over what their destiny is, what's going on, and how's the team look? Okay, so that at a very high level is really what investors are looking for. We're going to dig down into that a little bit further here in a little bit. Okay, so what do you need to go through this process? You got to have these 3 documents. Nothing works without paperwork. So you have to have an executive summary. We'll talk about that in a minute. You have to have a pitch deck / presentation, which should actually be your business plan. And you have to have financials to go along with that. Okay. How many people in here, just out of curiosity, have a 5-year business plan or 5-year financials by month? Okay, not too bad, not too bad. Okay, we'll talk, huh? Past is your traction. Okay, that's actuals, right? It's either 0 or there's some change in there. Okay, and the reason we talk about that is because it's a critical. I mean, this is all about money. We'll talk about that here in a little bit later. That's what you need to have. The other thing you have to have is a team. An investor will never invest in an army of one. The classic, get hit by a car and the company's gone. Okay, so you have to have a team of some sort that can execute. And you need to have a great idea, some sort of MVP or prototype. Now, when I was talking earlier about the first startup I was in when we got funded back in 1999, you just needed a pitch deck and a good idea. And the bar is raised ever since then. If you show up without an MVP, you're not ready yet. You're still in the prep phase, okay? The other thing you have to have, to go on what Roger was saying, you absolutely have to have a funding strategy, and it has to have an investor alignment, because you have to be able to deliver to what they want, like we talked about back there. If you want to talk to an angel investor, then you have to have those bullets. You have to know what the market is, the fit, da-da-da-da-da. If you don't have those things, you're not ready, okay? And so you have to align what you're trying to do to what it is to move through the pipe in a manner that an investor says, oh, that gets you to the next step, that gets you to the next step. Not, oh, I need $100,000 to do my website. That's not a chunk or a milestone. We saw 3 milestones: preparation, which should be your traction, because without your traction phase, the go-to-market phase, and the growth phase. So basically, your money, angel money, and VC money. And it has to line up so what you're doing accomplishes what they want to see. All right. Another chart that's been around forever and is still as applicable today. Entrepreneurs seem to think their whole life rotates around the first pitch. That pitch is everything in the world. Only purpose of that pitch is to get to the next meeting. A solid funding is a series of dots. So you can't go into the first meeting and try to give them the whole world in that first meeting and think, hey, I'm going to get funded out of here. And it's never going to happen. All you want to do is, in your pitch, is get to another meeting. Just get to the next meeting, okay? All right. Now we're going to walk down the process a little bit of what the process looks like. First, I wake up in the morning, oh yeah, I need something to invest in today. I'm going to find something to invest in. I got some change I want to do something with. So, you're an entrepreneur, you're going to go, oh, I've got something for you. I'm just what you're looking for. Now, this is where things get a little tricky. You want to give an investor, on the first meeting, don't give him your pitch deck if you can help it. Many times an investor will say, hey, send me your pitch deck. That may not really be what they mean, that's just what they said. The reality of that is the more information you give them, the more likely you're going to give them ammunition to not invest in you. Because they're going to figure out ways that they're going to read it their way. And they're going, okay. So if you can, just send them the executive summary. Just give it that. Give them a compelling reason to call you back. 10-second elevator pitch, huh? Okay. Give them a compelling reason to call you back. That's all you want them to do. Okay. So if you do a good executive summary, get that to them, and then they call you back. So what are we doing? When you give us our executive summary, what are we doing on our side of the table with that executive summary? All we're going to do at this point is look and see fit and readiness. I can read an executive summary and tell if the team's ready to go. And the question is, are they a fit? If I'm a fintech company and they're trying to sell me an automotive thing, then there's no fit. If it doesn't look like they've got their act together, then there's no readiness, okay? And this is your investor alignment here. If you'd have done your homework on investor alignment, then my fit and readiness should be a rubber stamp because you guys did your homework, and you're exactly what I'm looking for because you did your homework for me, right? Okay? So we look for fit and readiness. We look at that hey, these guys fit, you know, they look like they're pretty ready. I like what they've got here. This looks compelling. Let's give them a call. So we're going to give them a call. Hey, come on in and pitch. Okay? What we're really saying, okay, come on in, deliver the opportunity. What do you got? What's my opportunity? Why are we all here? Okay? Now, when you do this in the Valley, at South Valley Angels, we have one pitch. If we call you and you come in and pitch, you're coming in to pitch the investors. We give you 30 minutes or so, a little more sometimes. But we give you plenty of time to talk, go through it, and do their thing. A lot of the bigger companies, when you first go in and pitch, you're not in pitching to investors at all. You're pitching to the screening team, who will then determine they like what you like. And then if they like that, they'll say, hey, now how would you like to come to our monthly meeting? So you may go through a couple rounds of pitching. But either way, you're still just pitching. Again, the whole purpose of the pitch, set the next meeting. Okay? So now you've done the pitch. What are we going to do? We're going to say, hey, I like what they did. Let's meet the team. Now we're going to bring you back in and go into the deep dive. You notice that turned green. In most cases, they like you. And as long as you don't mess this up, you're probably doing okay. You have probably a good chance of getting somewhere. Because now you're going to go into a variety of meetings and build a relationship. You noticed on your side, that's why this goes over here. All we're going to do is ask you for more info. We're going to look at team dynamics. By the way, I saw everybody taking pictures. Did everybody grab one of my cards off the front desk? If you send me an email, I'll send you this deck. So if you didn't get a card, let me know. We'll get you one. Just to get my card, and we'll send you this deck. Okay? Now, the next one, you notice our side of the table turned green down here because this is when we start making money or start spending money. So once you get through the deep dive and we like what you're doing, we're going to go into due diligence. But that's not really due diligence. We're really negotiating the deal now. And we're going to spool up our lawyers and spend about $20,000 to $30,000 to write the term sheets and get all the paperwork on board. So now we're ready to fund you because we're spending money now. And once that's done, then everybody's happy, right? All right. Now, before we get into pitching, any questions on that? Yes?
Define team.
Define team. Okay. What you're normally looking for in a team is one, somebody who understands the technology. Let's call them a CTO. Somebody has to understand what it is you're building and can build that. Two, we're looking for somebody, we'll call them a CEO, that understands the business and can raise funding and can go out and communicate intelligently what you're trying to do. Okay? So those are the two starters. Those are critical. Eventually, you have to have a business person who actually can make money out of this deal and put that together. And then the fourth part would be advisors, people that are on board that can help you with questions, particularly if you're in a highly regulated area. Odds are the rest of your team aren't going to know all those answers. So that's what I call a team. Okay? And to get out of the prep phase, you can actually get out of the prep phase really with just a CTO and a CEO, assuming your CTO is running the offshore design team, which is traditional if you're a software company. All right, any more questions? Yeah.
Can you go back to the slide with all the ticket sizes?
I don't know, I can barely get going forward.
Question about
Ticket sizes?
yes.
Oh, all the way up? Where were we?
There was a slide we're saying 15.
Oh, okay, well, I'm not going to try to go there because I'm not sure my thumb will make it through the night if I have to go through all that again.
My question was for about a ticket size of $2 million round.
Okay.
Seems like it's too late for angel and too early for VC.
My next chart's going to probably answer that question. You listen to me. I'll pay you at the end here. Okay, but I'll tell you where you're going to go. So I'm going to give you some stats. So one thing about the Valley is everybody makes up statistics. You know, they say that 32.7% of statistics are made up. And this Valley is great for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some facts. This came out of these. This is kind of old now, but it came out at the end of 2017. But it's probably not much different. So this is exactly what happened in the Silicon Valley in 2017. So if you're out looking for funding, this is what happened. So these are stats from the companies that were actually successfully got funded. They contacted 58 investors. How many people are on 57? You're only one away. You know, they say every no is one step closer to a yes. Okay? They contacted 58 investors. They met with 40 of them. How many have you met with so far?
I haven't started yet.
So that's Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're almost there. 39. You're almost there. Okay. So they met with 40. Your question. The average fund was $1.3 million. So that's an important number. So if you're doing your cost model and not doing, well, if we get 1% of the market share, we can be $1 billion company. That is so lame. Don't ever say that to an investor. That shows me you did no analysis on your financials and you're done you might as well go home at that point. Okay? So 1.3 million is what they raised. So if you do your cost model and it says, hey, I need about $1 million, you're a little below average. If you say I need 1.9 million, you're a little above average. So knowing that, you better be a little bit better at 1.9 than the person coming in at 1. Does that make sense? So that, just a number, that's where that number is, okay? That's why when you said you wanted $7 million and I thought you were still down here never doing anything before you were on your first, I said, wow, that's a big ask off the top. But you clarified that for me. Okay. So once they found that, it took them 12 and a half weeks to close. So if your investor says, hey, I really like you on Sunday, you should have your money by April. Just saying. Now, there are some groups around here. I'm not going to use any names because everybody knows them. But there's some groups around here that will kick the tires on you as an investor, as an entrepreneur for 6 months and then pass. And you've probably just they've probably consumed 100 hours or better of your time. So be careful of that as well. Now let's get into the tricky stuff. How many pages is your pitch deck supposed to be? Quick. 5, 10? 10 to 15. 12. Go. You even raised your hand. No more than 10. So how many do you think of all these companies got funded? What do you think the number of the pages were? You ready for that? 19.2. Okay, now that doesn't mean your goal is to get to 19.2. That just means that all these people that said 10. Now there's a reason for 10. That goes back to some old, the Guy Kawasaki's and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. However, of all the companies that got funded, average was 19.2. So some of them were probably as high as 25. I believe Airbnb was like 25 pages, I think, or something like that, 23 pages or something like that. Anyway, so don't strive for more. You should be able to do it in clarity, but also don't try to give them the Reader's Digest condensed version and force yourself into 10. If 12 is the right number, 14 is the right number, then that's the right number. I just wanted to put that out there because this whole thing, if it has to be 10, I don't know. Anyway, now, when they got that pitch deck that you just spent 6 months of blood, sweat, and tears making perfect, they spent 3 minutes and 44 seconds looking at it.
Longer than I thought.
Well, it was a slow morning. Okay, so they spent 3 minutes. So what's the next question you should be asking me?
Which slides did they actually read?
Oh, what did they look at? So it's important. So what did they look at? Uh-huh. How many technical people got in here? Okay. The product's pretty important, isn't it? Well, let me show you what they looked at. No, I won't. There we go. There's a spread. The least important thing to them was the solution. They didn't even look at that at all. They spent 10 seconds looking at the solution. Why? Because they understood what the solution was. They're not going to look at a time. That'll come in a following meeting. It's that follow-up meeting thing. So there's a pretty big gap between financials and solution. Twice as much time on financials. Why is that? At the end of the day, it's all about money. It's all about money. So your 10 seconds, I can make you a lot of money. If that's all you can tell them, don't tell them about your product. Don't be an auctioneer and try to get 400 million words in 13 seconds out to them. Just say, I can make you a lot of money in 2 months. Here's my card. If that's all you have time to do it, then that's what you sell them. Okay. Now, obviously, there's a lot of stuff here in the middle. Okay. So here's where they spent their money. They wanted to spent their time. They wanted to first find out, are the financial models good? Do they know what they're doing? Is there money here? Does it make sense? Can the team do it? How do they fit within the competition? Why now? This and this are key to the opportunity, which we'll talk about. Once you start getting down here, the problem, you got to be solving a problem, right? Everybody says you have to be solving a problem. I will tell you that you can make more money solving a desire than you can make solving a problem. People will ignore problems, and businesses will ignore problems for years. But if they have a desire for something, they'll rationalize why I have to have that today. If that wasn't true, then with any of the big 3 video games released on Friday night, by Monday morning, they've cleared over $1 billion in that one weekend. They solved 0 problems. Probably generated more. I could bet you nothing happened that entire weekend for everybody that bought that game, okay? Just for reference. So this is what investors spend their money on. So think about that focus. If you have limited amount of time, stay up here. If you've got a 30-minute pitch, cover the gambit. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here in a second. Maybe. Oh, man, this is throwing me off my game here. Okay, so let's talk about the pitch deck. It is not all about the pitch deck. The pitch deck is purely a vehicle to organize and communicate your thoughts. One of the reasons I started doing talks was back in 2010 when I decided to think about going back and working with startups. I started coming to some of these meetup groups. And I could not believe that everything I went to, people would talk about what font I should put in my charts and how many pages I had and what are positive colors and negative colors. And I'm thinking, and this helps me start my business, how? So I said, these people need more than this. So it's not all about the pitch. The most important thing to start with is building a great scalable business. If you haven't figured that out, then you're trying to design your company through your pitch deck. Because if you do that right, and you understand that at the beginning, the pitch deck's easy. Your story's clean. It's not complicated at all. Okay? So that has to be first. Okay, the fundamentals. This is the fundamentals that are critical. We're going to talk about your business plan. Your business plan, or your pitch deck, as we're going to call it now. So how many people have heard, oh, I don't really need you don't really need a business plan in the startup model? And to a certain degree, I would say that's true. You don't need to have an 85-page Word document that breaks things down to nth degree. But you do need to have a pitch deck that understands and communicates your business plan. I would recommend that you take that pitch deck and make it a Word document and start breaking it down to more details as you go along, because when you bring on your team, you can just give that to them and say, boom, here we are, our plan, know this inside and out. It's probably going to only be 5 pages anyway. Okay. It must communicate and demonstrate the following. You understand the customer, your market, and your fit. We talked about that a little earlier on that chart with the arrows. You have a plan from today to exit, and that's critical. A lot of people talk about planning. Now, no plan survives first contact. So just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's locked in concrete. A plan says I have a plan, and it is always changing. But I've worked with startups, and I've sat in startup offices, and their plan is coming in the morning and says, what am I going to do today? And that is not a plan, okay? Hope is not a plan either. Okay, you know what it will cost. It is critical. So one of the things we talk about on cost models, I'm going to go back and give engineers a bad time because they're the best ones for this. I'm an ex-systems engineer, so I can talk to engineers like this because we all came out of the same mold. They'll always say, well, how can I project the future? How am I supposed to possibly know what the future is going to be? How can I be accurate? There is nothing in your cost model that you can't get a quote on. I need to get an office next year. Okay, what's a 3,000 square foot office cost today? I can assume it's going to go up 10% a year and so forth. Your cost should be no more than 15% from accurate if you're doing them right, because you can get everything quoted. There's no reason from it now. When it comes to projecting revenues, that's different. The most important part of your cost model is really your assumptions. If your assumptions make sense and they're logical, then the rest is just math. And if an investor says, well, I don't agree with your assumption of 10%, I think it's going to be more like 15. No problem. You go home that night, you change that assumption to 15 in your model, you come back the next morning. Here's your cost model. This must be working now because it's got all your numbers in it. Okay? So it's about the assumptions and the logic that you're going through there. If there's false product or things in there or just holes or gaps, then everything falls apart. So it's about the assumptions. That's how you project the future. You don't project the future, you have logical assumptions. Okay? Now, the next thing you want to do on yours is communicate. You have the team to execute. That's what you're doing. So this is what we do. You understand the market fit, you have a plan today from exit, you know what it'll cost, and you have the team to execute. That is what you're trying to communicate to us as far as your plan. Now, I'm going to spin that just a little bit different and say, what is your message? Okay? Because this is a little different. And this is kind of the way I like to spin it out because of my experience in working with folks. If you can think in this manner, this is a good way to do it in this model. One, you have a vision, and you see an opportunity based on that vision. Surprisingly enough, that is probably the first thing that is going to differentiate you from your competitors. Because the odds of you and your competitors having the exact same vision, you may be close, but the way you see an opportunity may be different. So let me give you an example about that. Simple terms. The future of the automobile is going to be electric. And everybody in the room goes, oh, I agree. Maybe it's going to be hydrogen. But anyway, the future of the vehicle is going to be electric. And we see an opportunity in charging stations and batteries, because every electric car has to have them. All of them. So in Elon's case, that was exactly his vision. He wanted to own all the gas stations in America. Only they're going to be electric. And he's on his way to doing that. So he wanted to own all the gas stations in America, and he wanted to be the batteries that go in every single electric car. And a lot of people are working towards his batteries because they are a good battery, okay? So I have a vision. Now, in Elon's case, he also had an ego and a lot of money, so he said, hey, I want to build my own car. But that in fact could have entirely destroyed his entire vision, because building a car is not easy. But he's got over that hump. He's broke now, but he's gotten over that hump, and the company looks like it's going to survive and it's going to do pretty good. That was a little iffy about summer of last year. Okay? So you have a vision and you see an opportunity. You have a solution and a plan to capture that opportunity, and you have demonstrated strong early traction. That is the message that you want to go through. So you have a plan that says you know how to do this, and your message is this. Does that make sense? They're the same, but they're a little different, okay? Now, let's talk about the pitch deck itself a little bit. First rule number one on your vision. So notice I start off with vision again, because this entire model was based and grown out of visionary entrepreneurs. But that's changing today. What's really happening today is the entrepreneurs that are coming up aren't necessarily the visionary entrepreneurs that have it built in their genes. They're not necessarily the Gates, the Steve Jobs, you know, the Packards and all these kind of folks. They're as much as anything young people that came out and says, man, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be in the startup world. That looks a lot, that's my career path. And today, parents are allowing that to happen because it's a legitimate path now, okay? So, you've got to have a vision, and that's the hardest thing for them to do that. So I'm going to ask a real quick question since you're up front. Do you have a vision statement? Not a mission statement. Give me a vision statement. Do you have one?
Got like multiple vision statements.
Oh, well, which one are you following then? That sounds like, you know, Sybil or something. I've got 7 personalities.
That's true, I do.
Okay. So here's the secret, because I believe in this. So one of the things we do, I was talking about the class we're going to do tomorrow. That class starts with the first thing of developing your vision. So if you can sit up and say, I believe the future of the automobile is electric, then we can start identifying where those opportunities and where you go, okay? So your homework tonight is to think about it. We see a future where, what?
People are going to live past 100, and hip replacements and joint replacements are still happening before they're 60. And so I want to...
Oh, that's way beyond a vision. Stop where you're first. Take that back and start again, and I'll tell you when to stop.
People are going to live past 100.
Stop. Okay, there you go. Visions are simple. They're not complicated. So if they're going to live, if we're going to start living behind over 100, where's the opportunity?
The opportunity is in preventative measures, joint rehabilitation or just generally joint health.
Really? Why don't I just grow a new one?
You probably will be able to.
Ah, so I see a future where people live past 100 and they can grow their own parts when they go bad.
That will be part of that too.
Ah, but that sounds like an opportunity there. See how that kind of ties in, connects a little bit there? Rather than just starting up and say, well, we have a problem. People don't like to stand in line. Oh, that's earth-shattering. Okay, and now you're going to tell me how you've got some amazing thing, how they can check out at the store without going to a cash register. Okay, so I believe, always think vision. This model is geared around people having a vision. Now, most startup folks, like I said, aren't necessarily purely entrepreneurial. Most startups I work with have no vision. If I ask them for a vision, I instantly get a mission statement. We're going to, oh yeah, okay. So start with a vision. Now we're going to talk about a couple things here. Your pitch deck. So I truly believe that there's no such thing as the right order of a pitch deck. You know, people that say it has to start with a problem, it has to start this way. No, it has to, their pitch deck has to flow in a manner that you're comfortable in presenting it. Now, if you're getting ready to give that pitch deck to an investor, if their website says, we want your pitch deck in this order, then the order is all of a sudden important, okay? But everybody that comes to this, you have to start with the problem. You have to start with your team. You have to, these kind of things, you have to do it whatever you're comfortable with and you can get your message across. Now, I'll put a caveat on there. Anybody in med tech or medical space, besides these folks up here? So if you're in med tech, that's one area where it's highly recommended to start with your team. Because if you're in med tech and pitching to med tech investors, many of them are probably doctors or have been doctors and so forth. And nothing against doctors, but they want to see how many people on your team have letters after their name. So many cases, in that case, it can be important to start with your team and show that, hey, we have Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, and Dr. So-and-so, then boom, all of a sudden, oh, you're accepted, you're part of the brotherhood now. So anyway, that's just one of the areas where sometimes it can be really important to start with your team. If your team is extremely powerful and strong, start with your team as well. Other than that, most people don't have a team worthy of starting with. Nothing against your team, but you know, it's just a team. However, this is the deck that you pitch. All of this stuff has to be in there somewhere. Now, coincidentally, this turns out to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, it's 10 pages. 10-page pitch deck. Okay. No. You know, this and some of these things may be a couple pages and so forth. But anyway, all this has to be there in some order. But it's in the order that you're comfortable with. Now, I'm going to bring a little something different to you. So we talked about earlier that if an investor asks you to give them your pitch deck, you don't do it, right? Because you're going to give them all this information, and you're not there to really help break down what that information means. So they're going to read it in their own biased manner of the way they see the world, and they go, I've seen this before, it's not interesting, next. Okay? However, if the investor says, hey, I'd love to have your pitch deck, you should ask them, do you really want my pitch deck or do you want my executive summary? Oh, just send me your summary. That's what they'll say a lot of times. They'll just say pitch deck because that's just what rolls out of their mouth. But if they say, no, I'd really like to take your pitch deck, and maybe you just spent 20 minutes with them or 10 minutes of them talking to them at a meetup or something, and they know a little bit about you, then they may really want your pitch deck. Okay? This is the pitch deck you send to them, not this one. Why? Because they're not going to look at your solution and so forth. So you do still want to give them your vision, but you notice what's up front? Money. How do you fit? See that there? You're focused on, nowhere in here is there what you are. There's why you. So you get one page to explain why you, not break down all the features of your deck or features of your product, but just explain one page. This is the one you send to them in this kind of a order. Now again, order doesn't matter, but you have to have your vision, opportunity, which is money, financials, obviously money, competition, we saw that was important on the chart, why you, team, and your ask. Real simple, short, direct, and then they can call you back, hey, I really liked what you sent me, but I didn't see much on your solution. I can be there at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, talk about a solution all day. Okay, so there is a difference between doing this, just for reference. All right, so we're getting down to the end here, and I want to do a couple things here. I want to say this. So the key thing to really being successful is understanding the startup model. The startup model is about speed to market, rapid growth, and not building a dynasty. Your idea is to get an idea out the door and moved. You're going to try to get it acquired in most cases because that's the easy rock to lift. And that's how 95% of companies go. Now, with that said, you can always shift your acquisition strategy to an IPO later on down the road. But if you start with an IPO strategy and start building a bunch of teams and a bunch of people and start buying a bunch of assets, that becomes more difficult to turn around and get acquired later on because the people acquiring you, they don't want all that stuff. They just want to buy your patents in most cases or buy your ideas so it can be plugged in. Okay? Leverage an ecosystem. It's really about leveraging this ecosystem. In this valley, you're very fortunate here. There's a lot of good people that can help you do things. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people here too, and not all of them are good. And so one of the things that I see a lot, this is kind of the squishy stuff of working here in the valley. I talk to a lot of startups, and they will have an idea, and they will go and talk to an investor. And that investor will say, oh, you need to be doing this, do this, and do this. And they'll go and they'll change your entire pitch deck because that one investor said that, oh, you're all messed up. Now, there's no guarantee that investor had any clue what they were talking about, okay? So now what you're really doing is you are the CEO of your company. Take in what you hear, assess it, and understand if it fits what you're doing and so forth. Don't just assume just because somebody says it. There's a lot of people in this valley that don't know what they're talking about. And you need to, you're in charge of your company. So take it in. I see so many people that say, well, the investor said I had to do this. And they went and spent 2 months to do that. And they said, I don't understand why I'm doing this. Well, why did you do it then? If you didn't understand it, don't do it, okay? So leveraging the ecosystem is the best way to go. There's a lot of good places. Again, try to, if you can, get engaged somewhere around an incubator or something and so forth and so on, or just try to stay engaged in the ecosystem, because that's where it is. You know, most people, if you've never launched a startup, raised funding, run a business, the odds of you stepping off the sidewalk at day one and being able to do that cleanly, smoothly, and do it rapidly and get down there is probably pretty slim. Okay? So build the people around you. They say, you know, I don't know who made the quote, the classic, you know, a successful CEO surrounds himself with people smarter than them. Okay? And that's really the key to being successful. You know, put your ego at check and work with the people around you. Okay? Be honest with yourself. This is one of the problems that I have with Startup 1.0, is nobody in the model in the area tells people the honesty a lot of times in this valley of what's going on. And so a lot of times we have what I call drinking the Kool-Aid, where you and the team believe you're the most amazing thing in the world, and you've all convinced yourself of that, and you're the only one in the room that doesn't see that you're not, okay? And so I see this a lot, and entrepreneurs will go down the road and they'll literally run out of money because they're not being honest to themselves and they're not really understanding what all is going on. It's kind of unfortunate. Now, with that said, I never tell a startup they have a bad idea. I may think it, but I never say it, and I'll give you 2 examples why that is. Example number 1. If I'm back in the 70s as an investor and this guy from Los Gatos came up to me and said, I got a great idea. We're going to put rocks in a box and we're going to sell them. We're going to make millions of dollars. Seriously? How is it? That is so stupid. Well, he's from Los Gatos. He launched the Pet Rock. For 3 years, it was probably the hottest selling gift in the United States. He made millions and millions of dollars. So I'd have been millions of dollars wrong because that's so stupid. Okay, now let's move up into the 90s. We'll even elevate it to billions of dollars of wrong. Okay? So you come up to me and says, I got a killer idea. We're going to take tap water. We're going to put in 8-ounce bottles of water and sell it for $3. Who the hell is going to do that? Come on, seriously? That's so stupid. Billions of dollars wrong on that idea, okay? So, you never tell an entrepreneur or anything that they have a bad idea, because who says your crystal ball is any better than anybody else's, okay? So, the secret is stay true to your beliefs, but know when you think, try to recognize when you're pushing the rock up a steep hill and it may or may not work a little bit. So one of the things that in what I call precision innovation is that is put together so that as an entrepreneur, if you come in today's Startup 1.0, when you come in as a startup and you succeed as a startup by getting funded, or you fail as a startup and get kicked out, right? Okay? That is so wrong. If you go to university and you fail finance, they don't kick you out of school. You just take finance again until you learn it, okay? So in what I call precision innovation, if you come in as a startup and you're in the sausage making phase, the preparation phase, and you're trying to get everything all together and find out and so forth and so on, and it turns out that you're really struggling and maybe your idea isn't good. One of the things I do when we're working with them is we'll connect you with another startup that's doing something similar, or maybe they're looking for somebody that's got the skill set that you have and you understand what they're doing. And what can happen now is you might have 3 or 4 startups that came in. They're all floundering, but we put them together and create one startup that actually now comes out and gets funded, okay? So in Startup 3.0, it's not about coming in as a startup and failing. It's about getting ideas out the door. And just because your startup isn't working, so I've probably done 10, 15 strategic partners and relationships in the last 45 days with companies that were struggling. I had one guy that came in, he had his idea, we sat down, did a one-on-one. At the end of the sessions, I told him, I said, you have a high fundability challenge. You've got some things that you're going to have to get through. Again, I'm not going to say you have a bad idea, but you've got some challenges ahead of you that like the pet rock. You've got some challenges to get funded. He came back and said, I looked at that, assessed it for a while, decided I just didn't want to go that way. But I'd love to still stay in the environment. And he says, and I've got great skills. So he's a great BD guy. I connected him to another company. They're blowing up now. And that guy was just what they needed, okay? I do the same thing. I had another company come up to me that had a really great product, a really great IoT, Internet of Things, edge computing product. And he wanted to get that product funded. And I said, that's going to be a real high challenge for you to get that product funded, because in 12 months, there's going to be a whole shelf full of them in Home Depot. So your fundability challenge is high. If you really want to get funded, you need to tie that piece of hardware and that into some sort of a platform that can do some connecting and da-da-da-da-da. Then you can get funded. So he came back about a week later and says, yeah, I don't want to do that. I just want to sell my product. So I connected him with a buddy of mine who's got a global reach in that market space, and now they're out selling that product around the world. So the startup model of 1.0, where you come in and fail and die or go out with one path, that is just not the effective way to do that. Again, work in an ecosystem. When you come in, if you're having struggling, we can plug you together. Well, I've got a global ecosystem. We can plug things together and try to make that work and allow you to have the career path you ultimately want, which is to be engaged in a startup and get out the door in the startup and do what you want to do, okay? So there's that. Okay, I think that's the last one there. Okay, now, with that said, I'm going to give you one piece of information that's critical on pitching your product. And this is where most people fail. You sell your product to customers. You sell your business case to investors. And actually everybody else. Nobody else cares about your product. So if you're looking for partners, they probably don't care about your product. They want to know, how come I want to be your partner? Well, how am I going to make money off of you? When you're trying to hire a teammate, they probably aren't even that interested in your product, other than maybe they are interested because it's something they understand. But they're going to come to your startup because of your business case. They believe that they can be successful working with your idea. So other than customers, they're the only ones that you're selling your product to. Everybody else in most cases, and definitely investors, you're selling your business case. So when I pick up a pitch deck, and it's 10 pages long, coincidentally, and 8 of them tell me about the product, that tells me that company doesn't understand the fundamental business model and are probably not going to be successful in their endeavor. All right, now that brings us to the end of the pitch session. Who's got some questions?
I have heard contradictory opinions about exit. Some investors say if you talk about exit, that means that you're not a passionate entrepreneur, you're already trying to figure out your exit. And others have said you must have an exit because investors want their exit.
Well, you're not focusing on you're not necessarily focusing on an exit, but as an investor, my first question is, how do I get out? So if an investor is telling you, I don't care about exit, then I'm curious about that investor myself, personally. Now, if you're sitting there going to spend all time telling me about the exit, true. All I need to say is, hey, here's my plan. My plan goes from here today. We're looking at 2024. We're looking at having an exit. That's what we're looking at right there, and that's our exit. We believe we're going to go in acquisition. That's what we're planning for. Done. Don't have to go any further. But if an investor tells you I'm not interested in exit, you were talking to the wrong investor.
I'd say not the investor, but the pitch advisors were not. Okay.
Wrong pitch advisor. Because as an investor, that's the first question I have is, how the heck do I get out?
So the deck you send versus the deck you present.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The deck you present is largely visual, right? Not a lot of words. The deck you send, words.
Ah, very good question. The guy Kawasaki. So I'm going to tell you an example here. So here's what that works. The pitch deck you just said, a lot of flash, no words. That's the pitch you do in a public forum when you're sitting in front of, and there's 300 people out in the audience, and you're pitching at Y Combinator's event thing. That's what they want to see there, because that's all about giving us your best Steve Jobs. And you, in that case, you as the speaker become what I call the facts. You are going to rattle off 98% of the people. You're going to rattle off the facts, and you're going to talk about the problem, and you're going to show a picture of someone pulling their hair out and stuff. Okay, that's your great pitch for that. Now, if you bring that pitch to me and do that pitch at my South Valley Angels, hey, it looks really good. Then we're going to say, hey, can I get a copy of that deck? So then Friday, when we all get together and start going through the stack of decks, and I get to yours and I see, wow, hair being pulled out. I go, I forgot what this is all about. I don't know what this is anymore. Done, I'm gone. Okay, so that pitch deck is what you do in a public forum, where you're trying to be flashy. You know, you're doing a tech crunch, or one of these deals where you're in a room full of people. That's where that comes in. You really want to have the facts need to be on there, so that because we're going to read that after the fact, and we need to be able to read through it and understand it and remember what it is. So that's where that comes in, and that's in two different positions. In that case, when you're positioning in that, your facts are up here, and you are presenting the personal connection, telling the story of why you're doing this, or filling in a personal piece of the fact that goes with that thing there, or so forth and so on. The facts need to be here because you're in a professional environment. You're not in a pitch world. And so that's a good question. I get that all the time. All right, who's next? It's a good time to ask questions. You don't get an investor standing up here very often. What's your questions? Seriously? Oh man, okay. I can't help if you don't ask a question.
Hey Gary, I have a quick question.
You've worked with me. You're overqualified. What's the question?
By the way, I'm working with Gary on my second startup actually. So Gary is my advisor for that. So he's just helping me out, to prepare some pitch decks and stuff like that. And we are planning to have a strategy for the funding next level. I have a quick question. I think it's really useful for everyone. There are a lot of startups actually. There are success formula for different startups. For example, funding might be one success. Great team, great product, business model. And another thing is timing. Do you think that timing is really important when we launch a startup? For example, Airbnb launched when we had a great recession in the US, especially in Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. Do you think that was a success formula for them? When they launched that product, it was on a recession time.
Yeah, that's interesting because the reality is it doesn't really matter on a necessary that. So a lot of people say that when there's chaos like a recession, that's the perfect time to take advantage of opportunity. But timing is critical because one of the key points of opportunity is why now? Why are we doing this now? Why shouldn't we do this 5 years ago? Why shouldn't we be waiting for a couple more years to do this? So timing's important from the why now. And that has to be clearly understood why you're doing it today. That's key to opportunity. But where the timing really falls more in line to what I see it is more, is your plan, again, back to the 3 milestones. You've got to be timing on those. So for example, when I work with startups, milestone number 2 is go to market. And in general, that's going to be a 12-month window because it takes you 12 months to get your product out, build up your customer base, to understand what's going on, understand their feedback, get that into your product, build that into your product, get it built out to come out of it. Because when you come out of the first phase, you have to have an MVP. That's your preparation phase. When you go to milestone 2, to get out of there, you have to have a version 1 that's been validated. And because now it's ready to hang from a shelf. And that's what the investor wants to see, is that validation. So the timing there isn't so much timing like what's the economy doing. Because I can turn on the news tomorrow and we're going to have a recession next week. Somebody somewhere is, oh, it's coming to the end. We almost hit 30,000 on the stock market this week. I mean, I remember when nobody thought we'd ever see 10 back in the day. Then it became 14. It's like, oh, we'll never get to 14 again when it fell back to 6. Now we almost hit 30. So that timing thing is all over the map. But the timing is more critical is, are you doing what needs to be done in the right length of time and in a right window like Roger was talking about that bites off that chunk that an investor says, yes, I'll fund you to do that because if you get there, I can take you to a VC or the next step. So timing is important from that matter. But don't be afraid because someone says, well, I heard that next year is going to be soft and the economy is going to be soft. Should I hold off? No, launch your company, move, go, keep going. There's somebody out there with money, trust me.
Thank you.
Yes, so about time. So you mentioned earlier today that, history tends to repeat itself. Mm-hmm. So can you give a couple more concrete examples about mistakes people do over and over again from your experience?
Mistakes they do over and over again. Let me think about that for a second. What are the mistakes that people do consistently? I would say the biggest mistake that they probably make is they try to apply what they learned in a traditional business model and try to bring that in to the startup model and say, oh, well, we're going to do this and then do that. And if you follow it, really the key to the startup model of this whole speed to market, as soon as you have something that you can give to somebody to use and play with, give it to them. Because they become their customer. Unless you have an engineering team that's going to go out and build your requirements document for you so that you can design the right product, that only comes from people using it saying, hey, I really like this, I didn't like this. Boy, if it could do this, it would be awesome. So early days, that's friends and family and so forth and so on. You get your alpha, your beta, you know, and then eventually you're going to go to market, you're going to have an MVP, and now you're going to put that in people's hands and let them play with it. So that is the biggest thing I see is people say, oh, I'm going to build it till I'm done. Well, then you're going to be out of money and you're going to deliver the wrong thing. So yeah, that's probably the biggest mistake I see is not understanding how to do the sprints and how to out back and, you know, test, fix, test, fix, test, fix, test, fix, and do it right, you know, and so forth. Go ahead. You have the mic. You got it.
If you have a product and you have identified the product market fit and you know you can solve some problems, from an investor's point of view, do you need to effectively address the competition that's in the market?
Absolutely. And let me talk about competition. So how many, let me assume you guys have some competition slides. There's two types of competition. Here's the one, this will also answer your question in another manner. Here's what I normally see. I see a spreadsheet table with a row of competitors, a row of features, and guess what? You've got all the checks, and they don't. Okay, that is great for your design team because it's important that your design team is building a product better than your competition. But as an investor, I really don't care about your features right now today. I will want to see that chart in one of the follow-up meetings. But I don't need to see that chart today. What I want to know in competition, how does your business fit in the sandbox, and how can you coexist within that sandbox? And who are the players in that sandbox? And do you understand how that is, okay? That is more important. So for example, it used to be, you know, someone says, oh, I've got this great product, you know, and it's a software thing. It says, well, gosh, isn't Google already doing that? And so now they says, well, why should I be interested? Google's already doing that. Well, it's possible, that may be. But Google may be doing it up here for the Fortune 500. You're doing it down here for the small and medium enterprises. So even though you've got a competing product, you are not even going after the same customers. So that is where the business competition is more important than the product competition. Product competition will always be there. And the reality is, in many cases, the best product loses. It happens all the time. They have a better team, a better management plan, and the product gets out there, but I have a better product. So, you didn't win. So it's more in that manner. It's more about how do you fit as a business and how you can get into it. One of the things we'll talk about when we walk through the class, if you guys decide to come to the two classes, we're going to talk about the three types of investors that everybody has. The incumbents, that's the people who have been doing it for 20 years. Again, talk about history. You're not doing anything odds are I can do what you're trying to sell me in your startup. I can already do that today. Can I do it effectively, efficiently, the way you're trying to do it? Possibly not. But there's an incumbent that's been doing it for 20 years. So somebody comes, well, gee, isn't Johnson Controls already doing that? Or isn't Microsoft already going down that road? And the odds are probably yes, okay? So you have the incumbents, and you have to take them. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the room because they're more likely the people that most people think of that's going to own this market, and you're not them. So how do you beat Google? How do you beat Apple? You don't. You don't. You show me that you're not actually competing head-to-head with them. You're going after a completely different market, or they're likely going to become an acquirer, okay? The incumbent. The second competitor you'll always have are the new kids on the block. So let's talk social media since everybody understands that, okay? Who's the incumbent in social media? Facebook. Very good, okay. So if you're doing anything in social media, you got to tell me how you got to get Facebook off the table so that I don't think that you're trying to compete with Facebook, okay? Okay, now, social media, the next kid, new kids on the block. Those are the companies that come out over the last 3 or 4 years and are starting to get a name, getting some traction. We know who them. Who's the new kids on the block in social media? They're actually a little newer. They're not, I would say they're a very brand new next generation. The next generation would be more like the Snapchats, the Instagrams, these kind of folks that have been around for a few years, got a name, they've got their millions of people, but they're the next generation of Facebook, okay? Then we get to the third competitor. And this is the competitor that you should be most concerned with, and that's the next generation just like you. Because they're the ones that are standing in our office. So when you come in and say, oh, we're better than Facebook, I say, I don't care. I got 3 companies in here that are already doing what we're doing. How are you better than them? And your answer is probably going to be, who are they? Because you're going to come up and say, well, nobody's doing what we're doing. Have anybody ever said that? Don't say that Sunday. So as an investor, I see startups all day. I've had people come in, and I've had people come in and say, there's nobody doing what we're doing. It's amazing. I just met 2 of them this morning. You don't know them. They're the most dangerous because they're the ones that are coming out in 2 years the same time you are. And if you're going to go on the boat that we believe the future of the automobile is electric, and in 2 years from now the world says, nope, it's hydrogen. Oh, man. So for right now, in the automotive world, that's going to be a big deal. Japan and Korea are betting everything on hydrogen. That's why they're all coming out with hydrogen cars. Germany's not yet. They're trying, because they're being forced to go electric. But anyway, so that's that kind of thing there. Oh, we think it's going to be this way. So, that's an important thing to stay engaged with there. All right, who's got the mic? She gets it next.
I was wondering about validation and traction, and in terms of what Series A or what investors want to see and how you can kind of quantify that or define when you're actually ready and how much traction you have.
Absolutely. So traction, we're going to talk about traction in a couple stages. In the early stages, you have no revenue. So obviously revenue is not the answer. But there's a lot of things that drive traction. In fact, you can go to a Series A and not have revenue. If you've got enough people using it, all you're trying to do is validate you got the right product, the right price. Now, revenue trumps all validation. If somebody wrote you a check, that is the best validation there is. So normally you're going to have some revenue, and they will look for revenue. But there's a variety of things that go beyond that. Traction is the type of people you're having, customers, partners, all these things tie together to become traction. Again, where you're going is you have to validate you have the right product. And if you don't have enough people that have been engaged in that to validate that, then it's not there. If you've got $500K in revenue, okay, then that validates it's enough people wanted that to write you checks. But if you've got 1 million people and your turn rate is 1%, that's pretty validated traction and as well. Does that make sense?
Sure, but what about trying to validate like the price of your product?
Ah!
So if people aren't paying for your product because you're trying to get them on there and it's in beta and all the features aren't
That
there.
is what you, so that answers a real quick question, then we got to wrap up so you folks can come on and do your pitching. But that is an important thing. When you go to market, that's all you're doing is putting that in people's hands and asking them questions. When you go to market, you have to have a formal early adoption program. Don't call early adoption as a thing. It needs to be formal because here's what happens from experience. When you give your product to an early adopter, they'll be excited for a week. But then the day job takes over. And they don't have time to look at your product and test your product and play with your product and give you feedback. Their day job takes over and they got to go back to what they're being paid to actually do, okay? So your early adopter program has to be set up so you can stay engaged with them and you're asking them questions. What do you think? Oh, I'd like you to do this, this, and this. And start asking them, hey, how much are you paying for your product today? Oh, well, currently we pay $500 a month to do this, that, or the other. Okay, well, now you've got a price point. You know the market's willing to bear $500. If your product is better and 500 is right, then that's a good. But maybe yours is going to be more, So that is a very tricky thing. But those are the two things you're doing. Validating you have the right stuff to do what your product does and validating you have the right price. And that's purely talking to them and asking the questions. And the reality is you're probably never going to be right until you start selling 1 million of them. And then you'll know for sure. But there has to be something that shows that. And if you have people hanging around and doing it. So when you go to talk to investors, these people that are your early adopters, they're your references. When somebody says, well, how do I know this? Here you go. Here's 5 names. Go give them a call. They're using our product today. And trust me, we will call. We will call. So that's how you kind of get around that a little bit. Okay, with that said, we're going to wrap up the questions right now. We've got some folks we got a couple elevator pitches, and we have somebody who's going to do a pitch.
Wanted to thank Gary and Rob for providing me this opportunity to get some valuable feedback on my pitch. A little bit of background about myself. I'm 19. I started this project in high school when I was 17. When I was 16, I was an instant delivery bike courier, contracted by the ones you know. And in that time, I figured out how the market ultimately functions and how it could be done better. So we provide tools of, the whole idea with this is that it takes the instant delivery market and takes what it is now as an oligopoly and converts it into monopolistic competition by providing tools of empowerment and tools of opportunity for entrepreneurs such as yourselves to go out and start your own instant delivery operation in minutes for free. And the vision behind this is that I believe free market competition is the most efficient market for most markets, following Adam Smith's invisible hand, which I don't know why it's so tiny on this one, but
Trust me.
yeah.
Don't worry about the pitch deck.
The ultimate implementation, the thing that would be funded would be 4 mobile applications and 1 website, business management app, which has a menu editor. You could open and close your depot. It allows you to hire on contract couriers within the system. My provisionally patented dispatcher control panel, which I'll go into later, sales and reputation analytics, and invoice scanner. There's the courier app, which has the routing GPS system, communication with the dispatcher control panel. You could find employment and contract work within your locality. You could go online and offline. The consumer app is where people order from, a digital marketplace where you access all businesses within your locality. You could rate goods and services with advanced searching. And then there's the Depot Manager app, which allows businesses at a depot location to view incoming orders and be prepared. It also doubles up as a cash register, so we do support pickup and over-the-counter sales as well. And then there's a website that contains the business management features and the consumer app features in one. So the bottom line here, the financials that you wanted to see, right? The way we make money is 5% commission on instant delivery purchases through our platform, 1% commission on over-the-counter purchases, 2% commission on pickup purchases. And if you compare that to the competition, they like to take 20 to 40% commission depending on which one you use. And we beat that because we don't manage a courier fleet. Not only does that project our system to be very, very inexpensive to run, but it also removes any limits on scalability. And how we do this is where the technological innovation and technological genius comes in. And I'm really tooting my own horn here because I invented it. I have the working prototype that also serves as the foundation for the entire platform. You can see the prototype working in the corner below. The Java code contains, aside from the courier, the business, courier, and consumer account data structures and the communication functions that allows them to operate, an in-house command terminal for executing any functions during runtime, and the courier control panel with something provisionally patented by me makes it strikingly easy and simple to manage your own instant delivery courier fleet. We also have 5 color-coded folders containing detail-specific concept drawings for each app and website interface. And let's take a look at the prototype for a sec. This is, yes, I repurposed a Pac-Man game. The final thing will run on Google Maps API. The map is generated with fractal terrain generation. You can see me messing it around. There's 2 different models here. This is 1 depot and 3 employees. The algorithm will figure out the most efficient way to do it. Essentially, if you leave it alone, it will run automatically, but you're able to interfere, and it will help you algorithmically do anything you need to do, like structured transfers. The second model is two depots on screen, and these are actual business accounts, actual courier accounts, and an actual consumer account buying the stuff. The contract workers are contracted by both depots. The employees is working for the blue one. And then there's the command terminal on the bottom that I'm interacting with in order to run commands that the apps would run. So let's move on. This is the team. I obviously assume the role of CEO and CTO. In this case, Then there's my friend Julian Carrero, who's a very talented interface graphic designer. We, over the course of the year, have made designs for the apps, detail specific, and digitized some for the purpose of patenting and future presentation. Jackson Prowell, super talented web developer. We knew each other in high school, but now we all go to CCSF. He's constructed the account structures and his own encryption system, and we're working on a server so that it could run, over the web. And then mentors. These guys are awesome. They're not on the team, but they're involved to teach. Jeff Williams Johnson, he's a good friend of mine. He's a senior MTS architect at PayPal. He manages the team that runs Venmo, but on his free time, he helps me because we both have a passion for the art of object-oriented programming. You could credit him for telling me about this event. You guys invited the team at PayPal, so it was forwarded to me. And then there's my father. He founded the biggest animation company in San Francisco. He raised $80 million to start his project, or start his company from scratch, essentially. He's mentoring my skills in entrepreneurship and, all unforeseen problems, and even stuff like, addressing people formally, because, he's my dad. This is our go-to-market plan. How does a free market like this gain traction? Well, the way to start is with Go Local.
Okay. Now, I know your deck is here. You're almost to the end, so.
Well, yeah, this is the last slide.
But 6
You want
minutes
me
is
to
up.
finish?
Finish your slide, though.
Okay, so you start with Go Local businesses like home kitchens, farmers markets, homegrown produce. A guy with a bike and who cooks really well and wants to sell food to the people around him can use this platform to start his own instant delivery business. It allows you to deliver for yourself, and that's the cheaper model because you won't be paying anyone. We'll only take 5%. And then there's also
Okay.
niche.
All right, now we're gonna call it good. Okay. Just put the pressure on you. Okay, let's give a round of applause. It's not easy to get up here and do this in front of people. Okay, so a couple things from a very high level. So he had a couple things that are very common with almost all pitch decks I saw. Way too tactical. We need to stay at the strategic level at this time because, as strange it may seem, most investors really aren't that sharp. They ask some of the stupidest questions I've ever heard of anybody in my life. They ask really stupid questions. Now, so at the tactical level, what happens here is because you guys are in the weeds. You guys and gals, you're all in the weeds. So you're thinking, at the tactical level, and generally you're thinking about your customer and the user of your product and what they're doing. So you're down to the tactical level. In this first meeting, we want to hear the strategic, the high-level stuff. We'll talk tactical later on. So it was too low of a level as far as the tactical. A couple other things that go on is your instant assumption on here was that the investor has a clue about the delivery and object-oriented stuff. And so an investor seeing all that stuff going around, they would most of them, unless they know that space, would have absolutely no clue what that means to anything. So it adds very little value. So if you want to take that and say, hey, this is our app running in real time, then boom, move off, leave it out in the corner, and talk about more high-level things. So let's back up here a little bit and go ahead and. So this, for example, we'll go back to this chart here. Go back to the one of your guys. See, this is a good example here. You've got this running down here. You can say you've got it running. This here is good. The other page, that's one of your 19.2 that you don't need. Just because you can leave it down here and say, hey, this is the actual app running, and leave it alone. They still aren't going to know what's going on down here, and they probably don't understand the delivery market. So a lot of those details at that level they don't understand. So let's go back up to where you had all your apps. Okay, right here. At a high level, a strategic level, you could easily say we have 4 basic apps: a business management, a courier app for the courier, the consumer app to ordering, and a depot manager app. Done. Don't need any of this. Don't need any of that. Somebody says, hey, can you give me some different business? So I'm going to give you a couple cues on a couple ideas on how to get that next meeting. So if they say, hey, can you give me some details on these apps? You say, hey, that's a really good question. I know I've only got a limited amount of time. How about I come back tomorrow at 1 with my CTO and we'll spend a couple hours talking about the app? Because what will happen is you're going to instantly, because it's your baby, it's like asking a mom, hey, you got pictures of the new baby? Have a seat. Of course I do. Let's sit down. You want them spinning? I've got them. So don't go down that rabbit hole. You have a limited amount of time. And you want to say, I'm more than willing to talk to you after it. But there's many cases what will happen, particularly if you've got a room full of investors. That may be the only investors that cares about that question at all. Nobody else in that room wants you to waste any time going down that rabbit hole. Now, you don't necessarily know that, but there's a lot of dynamics that go on in investors. You'll go into a room, some investors just like to hear themselves talk. So they'll ask you that question. Another area where you get that is when you're talking about your finances, where they'll say, oh, could you break down and tell me how you arrived at this? That's a great question. I got a limited amount of time. How do I bring my, we'll come back tomorrow. We'll spend a couple hours talking about finances. Again, the whole purpose of this meeting is to get to the next one. So you want to stay at a high level and make sure they understand the strategic value of what you're doing, not the fact that this guy can enter this in. Again, if you're going to show, like, for example, your dashboard. If I'm never going to use your product, I don't care about your dashboard. However, you might want to put it up there just so it's a visual thing and then talk about how the customers work within you at a strategic level and so forth and so on. So these kind of things can add things there. So that's one deal. Let's see. Let's go back up to the top and work our way down. We still got a little bit more time here. Let's see. So we started getting to some of these things here. again, just because they're an investor and they've made money doesn't mean they have any idea what an oligopoly, and they're going to start looking at this, and you're going to start like rattling off some of the names and so forth. They may not know who all those things are, and it may not necessarily correlate to anything. So initial thought on here, when I'm trying to understand what you're doing, this could be an extremely confusing chart. You know exactly what you're trying to say and what you're trying to conceive of. So when an investor is sitting in the room looking at your chart, two things are happening. One, he's reading his chart, your chart, probably not listening to you initially, because he's initially trying to get focused on the chart you're showing them, which is now going to go in their head, and they're now going to apply their inherent biases or their inherent background or whatever it is to what you're trying to show them, okay? But then you're going to try to talk to them about it, and now they're going to go, I'm confused, I don't even know what he's doing. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going down to the next one. Using tools, platform, any one person group can create an easily managed instant delivery operation with modern software infrastructure, any scale, any local range. That's a mouthful. Yeah. So you can break this down and identify a few things to break this down, the fact of this. So this just becomes kind of a lot of words and so forth that can just kind of get wrapped into it. The key things out of this, any scale, local, minutes. Now, as much as it sounds good, a word that really raises a flag, what word on this chart raises a big flag for investors? Free. Absolutely. How to make money? It's free. Everything's free. I'm investing in free. That sounds like a long exit. Anyway, but it's just one of those words. So if you start using the word free, make sure it's clear what that free means. Do you have free on your charts? No. Oh, okay. I'm about to say, you're in medical stuff. There, okay. Now, let's go to the next one. Power of efficient distribution. This is another one where, again, would have to understand kind of where your background is deep into this. So this is getting to where it could get a little confusing to what you're trying to do, because they're going to be looking at this going, oh, YouTube and movies and pictures and games and oh, okay, so you're doing some sort of an online streaming thing. Because their head's going down this kind of chart, and so it's just natural that most people, when they see something like this, they're going to be visual, and they're going to try to digest what this means first, rather than necessarily listening to you. Just a creature thing. It's a human thing. Okay, go to the next one. We done that one? How we make money. Okay, so now this gets into a couple things. You talk about how you're so much cheaper, but all these people charge this amount of money. These people have been around for a little while. Do you know how come they charge that much money? Because they found that anything less than that, they go broke.
I think they actually operate at a loss, Uber Eats in particular.
Oh, but you're going to do it for less and still make money. Yeah. Well, that starts to become 1 + 1 = 7. I don't think that works. Anyway, so again, these are things that go on in an investor's head while you're talking, because they're thinking. And they're going to say, well, if these guys are doing it for $3.50 and you're going to come in and do it for $1, well, I don't think that's going to work. So be careful as you're tying these things together. So this up here was really good. How do you make money? Boom, boom, boom. That's how you make money. This becomes competitive kind of things. Yeah. So leave the money things and how you make money and what that relates to and the assumptions and why you think that will work on one chart. Leave this and tie that into maybe the problem statements or where you're going with that to help define a little bit so that we don't get too confused, because I see on here that the people that are actually up and running are doing it at such a level above you, and we hear that, like you said, we hear that they're going broke. We're not sure they're making money yet you're going to do it for $1. And so again, it's those things just all start wrapping up, and now I'm losing credibility, because then you go to the next chart and you say, and this is why we do it. We're amazing because of this. So you want to develop this in a little bit different. And again, back-end Java code made entirely by me, graphical user interface, prototype, boom, boom. What I really want to know is, why is this a big deal at a high level? Why is this a big deal? Okay? So again, being too tactical is the #1 problem with almost all pitch decks I see for entrepreneurs. Why? Because most of you didn't wake up this morning with 25 years experience as a CEO and understand how to talk like a CEO. So you're instantly going to talk about what you know, which is what you've been working on, which is in the weeds. Fair enough? Yeah. Okay, who do you got next now? Yeah, we're going past that one. Okay, team. The most important thing on team is what has your team done that says you can do it? So what you're looking for is you want to demonstrate you do it. So one of the first questions we'll ask, has anybody on your team ever raised funding before?
Julian has.
Oh, there you go. We've raised funding before. We've had a successful exits. Oh, I don't care about the rest of this, so I want to know if you're a CTO, has your CTO ever designed this kind of a platform? Has he done something like this? Has he done a SaaS model? And if the, you know, those kind of things. So we want to know what have you done, because if you've done it, you can probably do it again. So what I see a lot of times are things like, he's currently this, this. But that doesn't tell me that he can come over to your project and do what you want him to do. So let me give you an example. About 5 years ago, I had a kind of one of those amazing moments where I'm looking at this team, and I'm talking to the team, and they've got the VP of Business Development, and I'm looking at it. She's worked at Microsoft, she's worked at Apple, she's worked at Google, she's worked at Cisco, and as it turns out, I'm going, wow, she's got some, she's been around, she's doing exactly what they want. In fact, these actually are the kind of customers that they'd be going. So my first question as a VP, I said, oh, so tell me about your sales team and what you did at those companies. I was a receptionist. And you're the VP of Sales and Marketing now. Well, but the reality is, those companies that she worked at were probably the top 5 customers they had. And guess what? As a receptionist, she had the CEO's phone number. She had the VP of Sales phone number. She knew him well. She got Christmas cards from him. They're on a first-name basis. They've been to the wedding, you know. She could set up a meeting tomorrow. So what I'm looking for there is I'm looking for a business person that says, oh, she can set up a meeting. She can have all 5 of those meetings this week. And probably maybe even close a couple of those deals, or at least if nothing else, get in there as an early adopter. Anybody can hire a salesperson that can close a deal by August. It's January now, but you know. So what we want is she could go in there and she could have deals closed and have meetings set up by noon tomorrow for lunch. So we want to understand what to do. So that was just like a game changer for me when I saw that. It's like, oh, okay. You know, but anyway, so that's what we want to know, because if you've never done it, I'm not sure you can. But if your team has done it before, you can probably do it again. So think about that. It's what you've done and that kind of thing. Okay, next. Go-to-market plan. Establish market deliveries. Yeah, this go-to-market plan is got some stuff on it, but more competition means better consumer service. There's a lot of stuff on here that doesn't necessarily lead me to what your go-to-market plan is.
Yeah, I think I wanted to say it was like growing a tree, essentially.
Ah.
Starting at the roots.
No, it's actually like pushing a big rock. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Again, so that's just a good example. You know, this could use some work. I would highly recommend coming to my class tomorrow, because we're going to go through page by page on this, and we'll help you build this in real time.
I'd honestly love to.
And yeah, so anyway, but it's got the parts in there. It's got the parts in there. I've seen worse.
Just putting it away in a slightly different way. As you think about your deck, you really want to have, I don't know how you feel about this, very few bullet points. And really the bullet points that you have should be reinforcing what it is that you're talking about. Because I think the last thing you want to do is to make the investor choose between either reading your slide or listening to you. I think what you want is for them to be listening to you and then reinforcing what you're saying, so they really get it as you're talking about it. But when you have such dense slides, and like this slide, I couldn't listen to you and read the slide at the same time. I'm just not smart enough. So I think as you think about your decks, just think about what is it that you're going to discuss, and what is the pertinent information to actually reinforce and help them get what you're actually speaking about.
Exactly. Now to close up, again, give him a round of applause. He did a good job. We beat him up here, but the job wasn't to stand here and say, oh, that was awesome. We wanted to be critical so you guys could learn and understand what's going on here. And so, let's see, what was I going to say there for a second? I lost my train of thought on that one. Oh, well, that's not even important. Anyway, okay, well, that takes us to, we got 1 minute left. Anybody got a question? Yeah.
Your experience in general, else things being equal, that founders with extensive experience in the industry suggesting they're going to serve are more successful?
Absolutely. So that was great. I was talking with somebody about this morning. A question I frequently get from an entrepreneur, especially ones that are young and getting ready to formulate their idea, it makes me think what I was going to say earlier. So we want to formulate the idea. Say, so what are the hot? Like Rob says, they got an event coming up that talks about the hot markets for 2020, right? So what if I come back, so what's the hot market in 2020? And I tell you it's going to be bioscience. It's going to be the hottest market in 2020. Well, that's what I'm going to get into. Do you know anything about bioscience? No. Probably don't want to get in that market then. So a lot of entrepreneurs try to say, what's the hot market, and that's where I'm going to go. You have to stay focused on what you know and what you understand. And same thing with investors. Investors that make mistakes fall in love with the product, and they invest in something they're not familiar with. And it's really about the market and everything around that product. So absolutely stay in your lane and do what you do and what you know, and you'll be much more successful than to try to chase what's going to be a hot market that you know nothing at all